hey, if you've got like 11 minutes, I would love to tell you about the news. So feel free to let this video play and then go do like the dishes or something you've been putting off while I tell you about the news. Because we've got information about voting, a Senate vote on a federal bump stock ban, 3 presidential candidates making 3 very different kinds of headlines, and a singer got a DWI. So if you've got a few minutes, let's do the news. For Wednesday, June 19th. Juneteenth. On October 1st, 1863, in the 3rd year of the Civil War, President Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation, which meant that all enslaved people in Confederate states were free. And on that, Union soldiers, many of whom were black, spread the news, reading the proclamation in Confederate states. But in the Confederate states, there was a lot of, I presume, oh no wing going on with the white people. So that was January 1st, 1863. The Civil War ended April 8th, 1865. It wouldn't be until June 19th, 1865, when around 2,000 Union troops arrived in Galveston Bay, Texas, and were very surprised to see that there were more than 250,000 enslaved black people there. They read the now 2.5-year-old Emancipation Proclamation, and thus 250,000 black people who were free, but their enslavers never told them or allowed them access to the information or education to read the information, were informed of their freedom. Reconstruction followed from 1865 to 1877, during which 1,500 black Americans were voted into different political offices in the country. In 1877, we saw the beginning of Jim Crow laws and poll taxes and literacy tests specifically designed to keep black Americans, mostly, although really it was anyone except for non-poor white people that were treated to these laws, from casting a ballot. Then, after protests and marches and a church bombing that killed 4 young girls, people being beaten within an inch of their lives on the Edmund Pettus Bridge and inches further in restaurants and shops and back alleys all around the country, the Voting Rights Act of 1865, which prohibited race, color, or membership in one of the language minority groups from being something that prevented folks from being able to cast their ballot. And that was great. That was the Voting Rights Act. That was 1965. In 2004, we elected our first black president, and in 2013, the Supreme Court cut a key piece of the Voting Rights Act, making it much easier to create race-neutral discrimination laws, which means they can say, like, hey, we're not trying to prevent non-white Americans from voting, because we can't do that. Unfortunately, all we're doing is just closing the only voter registration and DMVs in areas where we don't see enough white people to feel like we won't lose the election. Hours after that ruling on the Voting Rights Act, Texas implemented a voter ID law that the Justice Department previously said was illegal because it disenfranchised voters. And then Attorney General, but now Governor Greg Abbott was like, yeah, no, that's why I'm doing it. But I get to do it now. 20 years later, we've got voter ID laws, some convict trying to convince you that the last few elections, and also the one coming up in less than 5 months, were all stolen, and a few cases at the not-so-Supreme Court that are trying to turn that gap in the Supreme Court into a hole so big that they can drive a dictatorship right on through it, and then park it there. And that's Juneteenth. I apologize for nothing if you're still listening. Check your voter registration, and if that history made you upset, yeah, pal, me too. Check your voter registration, because it might have gotten its feathers a little ruffled, but people fought and died for that Voting Rights Act. It remains a vital piece of democracy. It is harder than it should be for a lot of people, but we still have the right and therefore the duty to cast a ballot. And now the news. Listen, tough to transition from that to like, a singer got a DWI. So to help transition into the rest of the news and maybe help you a little in case all of that caused a little election stress, this is a great time to remind you that I have a nonpartisan nonprofit that is out to help make Election Day just a little bit easier for you. It is not easy for everyone to cast a ballot. We want to make it just a little bit easier. So head on over to raisingvoters.org/beavoter and take the pledge to be a voter. Because we still have a democracy, and it is the fight of this moment to keep it. If I'm being honest, that did not help me ease into the news, but nevertheless, here we go. As I alluded to a moment ago, Justin Timberlake was arrested on a DWI charge in the Hamptons just after midnight on Tuesday morning. I don't really want to do a ton about this. For me, I don't want to make it a whole story, but this is a reminder that calling a taxi, a friend, or a rideshare saves lives and licenses. I hate to say I told you so. I'm just kidding. I kind of love it. I'm not saying it fixes me, but it doesn't not fix. It helps. You know what I mean? Anyway, hey, as predicted, Senate Republicans blocked the Democrats' effort to ban bump stocks after the Supreme Court put them back into the world with their Friday ruling. Now, this was kind of always going to happen. But first and foremost, I say it all the time, but when you are trying to do the right thing, when you are trying to save lives and be of service, get caught trying. Call the vote, even if it's not going to pass, to make the other side go on the record. Secondary to that, there are some Republicans who are open to a narrow ban that would only apply to bump stocks. Senator Chris Murphy, who was elected to the Senate a month before the Sandy Hook shooting, says that he will continue working with Republicans to see if there is any possibility of moving this federal ban forward. And finally, let's take a look at 3 presidential candidates and how they made news on Tuesday. Starting with President Biden, who announced a plan to give about 500,000 immigrants who are married to American citizens but currently without citizenship themselves a way to get exactly that. So currently, the way this works is that if an American marries someone who is not a citizen but living in the United States legally, the process for green card application can be fairly cut and dry. However, if that person has been living in the States for a while but not legally, they may have to return to their country of origin for as long as 10 years before applying to come back. A waiver is possible, but that's like a 3.5-year wait. It is timely, it's expensive, and it's also kind of like, okay, well, I guess we'll just hope there aren't any typos in the paperwork that'll send us back to square one. Under this new policy, many spouses without legal status can apply for lawful permanent residence without leaving the country, putting them on the path to citizenship. To be eligible, that person will have to have been living in the United States for at least a decade, not be a security threat, and be married by this past Monday. This does not apply to new marriages. The cutoff was literally the day before he announced it. Applications will be on a case-by-case basis, vetting applicants' previous immigration history, criminal history, and potential for fraud, among other things. This is one of the president's most sweeping policies on immigration since he has been in office. So that's what he did on Tuesday. Meanwhile, former President Trump learned on Tuesday that the New York Court of Appeals has declined to hear his 2016 election interference crime gag order appeal case because they just don't trust that he won't say something that will put people's lives or this case in danger. Mostly it's the lives thing. However, Judge Marchand is expected to rule soon on the defense's request to lift the gag order. As a reminder, the gag order is that thing he violated 10 times, earning him a $10,000 fine and the yet-to-be-seen threat of jail. Instead of lifting the gag order, have you considered expanding it? And then on over to RFK Jr., who, despite claiming that he can for sure be president because he will for sure be on the ballot, will indeed not be on the ballot in enough states to make it on the stage for next week's presidential candidate debate hosted by CNN. Assuming he wins every state that he is on the ballot in, which already makes a very big assumption, the best he can do is take home 42 electoral college votes. I don't mean to blow your mind with math, but 42 is significantly less than 270. His ballot eligibility is in various states of progress in other states, but right now, just 42 electoral college votes. Bad news for the guy who was so desperate to get into the debates that he tweeted, quote, it makes me laugh so hard every time. I offer to eat 5 more brainworms and still beat President Trump and President Biden in a debate, before adding a second tweet that said, quote, I feel confident of the result even with a 6-worm handicap. That's comedy gold. He tweeted it on my mom's birthday, May 8th, in case you want to save up for next year. But really, that's a gift from me, because he's a doofus, but I will never not think those are 2 of the funniest tweets ever, made funnier by the fact that I think he meant it. He would, for sure, if it got him on that stage, that dude is going in with a 6-worm handicap. So that's a little picture of modern American politics in this moment. We live in the dumbest timeline. And that's it. That's the news. I'm proud of voters. Duh. Go to raisingvoters.org/be-a-voter, take the pledge, be a voter. It takes 2 minutes, and hey, bonus, it's free. Also, watches. National Watch Day. It's National Watch Day for some reason. But more than watches, because you're right on time, and you don't cause a weird tan line. I'm proud of you.